Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Power Baseball League. Last week, we dove into business rules and walked through how to set those up and everything you need to think about there. This week, we're going to dive into the fascinating topic of roll-up fields, and we're going to touch on calculated fields a bit too. But let's get started just with the basics of roll-up, and Kylie's going to walk us through how to implement and build one and implement it and do its roll-up thing.
Perfect. Yeah, let's go ahead and build one from scratch right now. So we're just going to create a new column or a new field for us old folks. And in this case, we're going to call it our registration revenue. And one thing, well, we'll get there. So we're going to live build this for you. So in this case, we still want to choose the data type that makes sense for our roll-up. So what a roll-up is we're going to gather a whole bunch of data from related records, right? So in this case, what we're going to look at is we're going to start at our contact, and we want to kind of sum some data from the related registrations from that contact. So in this case, that registration is a currency field, so we're still going to choose this here. But some other cool uses that you could have for roll-ups could be things like look at the most recent activity for this contact, or things like that too. So let's choose currency. And here we can choose if it's a calculated or roll-up, and I'm going to click add roll-up. And we'll talk in a minute a little bit about the difference there. And we can as this pulls up, I guess that's a good time. Malcolm, do you want to talk about the difference between a calculated field and a roll-up field?
Yeah, so a roll-up field is what you just described, like calculating the total number like we're doing here of registrations. You could do like the total number of cases that a company has submitted, or an individual, or a current calculated rather, or a roll-up total of something, right? So you're essentially grabbing data and summing it up and pulling it all together. A calculated field could be used for something. I think that one of the use cases that came up when we were talking through this was like to calculate a tax rate, or something along those lines, where you're essentially performing a mathematical calculation on the data. So slight differences. We're going to put some links down in the links space below. What do we call it? The description box, I guess. I don't know. I'm not used to that. So we'll put them down there. That's what I know that they do. They say we'll put them down there, and so we'll put the links down there, and you can go through and read the Microsoft Docs on both Rollup and Calculated, and that'll give you a good overview of sort of more detailed explanation than I just provided. But what you're about to see here with the Rollup field is a good real life sort of example of how you might use this kind of information.
Yeah, perfect. Great overview. So we're going to go ahead and link our related entity. So our contacts, and then we're going to choose our registration that we're related to.
Registrations, yeah, right there, second one down.
Oh, right in front of my face. Perfect. And then we can choose how we want to aggregate that data. Let's make this a little bigger so I can actually see what I'm trying to get to. I can also choose to filter this. So in the case of maybe we were trying to see the most recent activity or something like that, in that case, we could add a filter that maybe we only want to see completed activities or things like that. In this case, we want to see all registrations, and then we're going to add an aggregation to get the sum, but you'll see we can choose other things like the max amount paid, the minimum paid, average, right? So all of these things in this case could be beneficial, right? These might be data points we want to look at, but in this case, we're going to use our sum, and then you can just save and close. And you've created it, right? That's all you need to do. And then you can add that to the form so you can view it. And similarly, the space to create a calculated field is really similar to that. But let's quickly jump over to see what it looks like. So we have one we created right before this session to kind of do a little easy bake oven of what it looks like. You can see we have our registrations here. Let's look at Anthony because he has 2 registrations. We'll pop that open. You'll see we can see his 2 registrations here, and we have the registration revenue with the time where it was last updated. And it shows that it is all up to date. And we do have this little calculator here that allows you to recalculate. So if we added a new registration, we could recalculate and see that updated total right there. or if you don't push that button, then it will recalculate automatically every 12 hours or something like that, I believe.
Yeah.
So that's something
Yeah,
to keep in mind when you're looking at these, like how current do you need the data to be?
Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. You could even go into, just to give folks an example of what it looks like when it's first kicked off. So if you create this, and let's go into a different contact for a sec that hasn't been calculated, just so that you're not alarmed. When you first create this, to Kylie's point, it's going to auto-generate, it's going to auto-run over time, but it doesn't happen immediately upon creation of the field, which is important to know because I've been caught by that in the past where I create it and I put it on and I'm like, oh, it's not working. Why isn't it working? Like I know that it should calculate something and have a value here, but it doesn't. As soon as you click, so as soon as you click it or when it runs next. And so there's a set of jobs that will get created automatically when you create these fields, and they'll just get system will just trigger those off and it'll automatically run through and calculate that. Or at any time, to Kylie's point, you can open it up and do what she just did. Click the calculator, click recalculate, and boom, there you've got the total right there.
Perfect. Yeah, so you guys can see that was super easy to create and lots of functionality that's available with that really quickly. So do we want to talk a little bit about some of the limitations people should be aware of with calculated and roll-up fields?
Yeah, and full transparency, I get confused and confuse between the two because there's different limitations on roll-up and calculated fields. And so, for example, you can't roll up a roll-up, but you can string a calculated field up to, I think it's up to 5 times, right? And so there's like nuanced things like that you need to kind of keep track of because there's certain things you can't do. Roll-ups in particular, one of the big ones that I've seen cause people problems is you can't trigger a workflow on that information, right? And so that the links we talked about, and Kylie, you might have other examples to call out, but the links, if you scroll down in each of the sections for roll-up and calculated, they identify a bunch of considerations to make that do a really good job of outlining all of the do's and don'ts and cans and can'ts.
Yeah, great call out. And I think the things you really want to be careful of is when you're combining your roll up and your calculated fields, because most of those scenarios are probably not going to work for you. And you just need to be careful with that and maybe think about alternative solutions, right? Anytime you have other automation that you want to fire off of those, you just need to think through it and make sure that it's possible. And I think the one thing I thought was interesting when we were reviewing the docs before this too, is you can only have a maximum of 100 roll-ups per environment and 10 per entity. Mm-hmm. So you do want to be a little bit careful. Don't go all crazy willy-nilly with them. But they're super powerful. So it can be something that's really cool to look at. And I think we showed you really high level the filtering and kind of the functionality, but you can get more in depth with that. And with calculated fields, you do kind of have more formulas and things you can use to do some really cool things. So I think they're a really powerful, cool feature. So definitely encourage you guys to check them out. Check out the docs down below and try them out in your organization.
I think that's it. I mean, that like we've said every week or most weeks anyways, the best way to get familiar with some of this stuff is to just go in and play with one. So go and grab, any example, even just like I said, just total up the number of something that somebody has related records on their contact or on an account or something like that. Go and perhaps a challenge, go and build one that totals up the total number of contacts related to the parent account and put it on the form somewhere. So little things like that. And it really is, we didn't do any editing or anything. That is as quick as it is to create one of those fields. They're pretty straightforward to pull together and put on there. And you can easily get sucked into like, oh, this is so easy. I'm going to calculate this. I'm going to roll up this. So to your point, a great call out around the limits and limitations with respect to how many you can do on an entity or within the org, because it is easy to get carried away or all willy-nilly, as I believe you said. So that's all we have for you folks, and hopefully that gives you an overview and gets you familiar with it. If you've never tried playing with the roll-up fields, I mean, now you have the information. There's no reason you can't go in and give it a shot. We wish you good luck. If you have questions, feel free to post them below and we'll try our best to get back to you. And stay tuned until next week. We'll see you then.
Thanks.
Bye.